Good evening, and welcome to our second Township Committee meeting of the month. We will now salute the American flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands, one
nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all. Before we continue with the opening statement, we'd like to have a moment of silence for 4 longtime Maplewood residents who passed away since our last meeting. Retired Maplewood Police Captain William Willie Steve. Captain was born and raised in Maplewood, graduated from Columbia High School. After 6 years as a New Jersey State Trooper, Captain Steve joined the Maplewood Police Department and served our community for 31 years. Retired Maplewood Police Lieutenant Charles Gallagher. Lieutenant Gallagher was a Maplewood police officer for 25 years. Afterwards, he went on to be a Maplewood Police Records Clerk from 1997 to 1999. Lieutenant Gallagher was also a volunteer member of the Maplewood First Aid Squad, and he resided in our township for many years. Richard Dick Rampola was a Maplewood volunteer and a 58-year resident. He was also a volunteer with many organizations in town: the Cub Scouts, Lions, Civic Association, 4th of July Planning Committee, the Cultural Commission, and he was also a Maple Leaf Award winner. And then David Sprang. David was the chairman and longtime chairman of the Maplewood Servicemen's and Servicewomen's Organization. David was also a 60-year resident of Maplewood and loved our town. So we could just have a moment of silence for these 4 great Maplewoodians who have now moved on. Thank you. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2020 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2019, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Adams.
Here, I think.
Mr. Daffis.
here.
Mr. DeLuca.
Here.
Mr. Lembrick.
Here.
Mayor McGee.
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires all meetings of public bodies be open to the public. And whereas Section 7A provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting, and whereas it desires the governing body to comply with the provision of this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Maplewood, does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the governing body by the public and otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observation, the actions, and discussions of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Adams.
Yes.
Mr. Daffis.
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca.
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick.
Yes.
Mayor McGee.
Yes, and thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Welcome again to our Tuesday, May 19th Township Committee meeting. I will now run through the agenda. We will first start with the proclamation for Emergency Medical Service Week, read by Mr. Limbrick. We will then have our first public comment, which is for agenda items only. And then at that point, we will move into our ordinances. We have two ordinances on final passage. The first is regarding traffic and vehicles related to 775 Prospect Street. Our second ordinance relates to establishing a bank cap. And then our third ordinance on introduction is in regards to requiring placement of street address numbers on all buildings in our township. After that, we will move on to administrative reports. It is noted that we have reports from departments on the agenda, but we don't have any today, so therefore we will not be hearing from any departments. After our administrative reports, we'll have our reports from our elected officials. And then this evening, we have a total of 7 discussion items. We'll be discussing the 2020 full season, the 2020 4th of July event. We'll be discussing kids camp and other summer-related recreation activities. We'll have a discussion to support some legislation. One is New Jersey legislation A3948, and then also support of another resolution as well. We'll have a discussion of the adoption measures to help Maplewood small businesses sector, including and not limited to outdoor cafe regulations and other initiatives. We'll have an update from our Office of Emergency Management. And then we'll have an update regarding Maplewood's affordable housing requirements. At that point, we'll move to our consent agenda. For this consent agenda, initially it's stated that we have 10 items, and we will have 10 items, but we'll be pulling out agenda item number 5, which is resolution number 11620, to make a correction on the description of the allocation of funding that's been established there for the Open Space Trust Fund. But the remaining items of the agenda include awarding a contract of professional engineering services. This is relating to our sewer emergency repair. The awarding of a contract for a mowing of large turf areas, bills and claims, the refund of a tax overpayment, the authorization to accept a donation, the amendment to the procurement card program, a resolution authorizing payment to our tax assessor, Edward Galante, the approval of regular session meetings, and the approval of our closed session meetings. After the consent agenda, we will open up for our second and final public comment, which is on any agenda matter. And after that, we will adjourn. So that is our agenda for this evening on May 19th. And we'll now start with the proclamation to be read by Mr. Limbrick. Did we lose Mr. Limbrick? Mr. Limbrick?
Okay. Final. Thank you. It's my pleasure to read the proclamation declaring this week as Emergency Medical Services Week. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Whereas emergency medical services is a vital public service Whereas the members of emergency medical services teams are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And whereas this is an extraordinary time for all emergency medical responders and EMTs who are dealing with the coronavirus pandemic on the front lines these last few months, and this continues to be very challenging for everyone. And whereas access to quality emergency medical care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury, and whereas the emergency medical services system consists of first responders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, firefighters, educators, administrators, emergency nurses, emergency physicians, and others. And whereas the members of emergency medical services teams, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. Now, therefore, Frank McGehee, Mayor of the Township of Maplewood, and the Maplewood Township Committee do hereby proclaim May 17th through 23rd, 2020 as Emergency Medical Services Week with the theme EMS Strong, Ready Today, Preparing for Tomorrow. And we encourage the community to observe this week in appreciation of our frontline medical responders and emergency medical technicians.
Thank you, Mr. Limbrick. Would Deputy Chief like to say anything? I see he's with us this evening.
Yes, just wanted to say thank you for the recognition this week. As you stated, it's been quite a ride for the last 2 months, and you know, your continued support has meant a lot to the guys, and it's been stressful, it's been tough, but you know, the guys are there, they're working, and this recognition just you know, makes it better for them to just keep going. And the motto is perfect. We are ready now, and we're still preparing for the future because we never know. We don't know where this virus is going to take us. So, but we just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Ariema, and thank you not just for this week, but for this year. I mean, you know, you all of you stepped up so much and provide our community with the resources that we need, and we greatly need and need it and continue to need as we get through this pandemic. So I salute you. We all salute you. We appreciate you, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And you feel free to leave. You don't have to stay for 2 hours.
I was gonna hang around for the ordinance on the house numbers.
You are more than welcome.
That's another much appreciated effort. So
awesome. Moving on to our next agenda item, which is public comment on agenda items only. We did receive some comments regarding our ordinance on final, ordinance number 299-20 related to 775 Prospect Street. So I will hold off on those until we get to that ordinance. I have not received anything else regarding agenda items. Mr. Waltz, do we have anything regarding any other agenda items besides Prospect?
You have no public comment at this time, Mayor.
Thank you. So with that, we'll move on now to agenda item number 7. We have ordinance on final passage.
Mayor, on final passage, ordinance number 2997-20. It's an ordinance to amend Chapter 257 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood, entitled Vehicles and Traffic. This ordinance will designate a parking prohibited at all times area located in front of the property at 775 Prospect Street.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. We have received a few statements from residents regarding this ordinance, with communicating some concerns. The ordinance, you know, mandates the removal of a parking space on Prospect Street. Currently, on that strip of Prospect Street, you can only park on one side of the street, and so removing one of the spaces that are available in that area would actually, as I understand it, cause some some challenges for the residents who leverage the other side of the street for parking. There were some conversations held with a couple of the residents that reached out, and also our engineer, Mr. Kidner, was made available in that regard. He sent a correspondence communicating after talking with our consultant, Mr. McCormick, that he would like to visit the area and maybe potentially suggest some alternative ideas without eliminating any parking at all, which would help mitigate the issue of some of the concerns of our residents. So what I would like to recommend, and we can take a motion and go through the vote process, is that we actually vote this ordinance either down tonight or defer it. And I can refer to Mr. Desiderio about the right procedure here. But the end is not to move forward with passing this ordinance tonight. So, Mr. Desiderio, if you're on the line, if we wanted to revisit this ordinance in a future township meeting, maybe the next meeting actually, do we move to not approve the ordinance, or do we do some other type of motion here?
Well, that depends on who makes the motion. I procedurally, I think you should introduce it and then have discussion, Mayor, amongst the members of the committee.
Okay, well, it's on final, so I will go ahead and ask for the motion, and then we'll have the discussion.
It's on final though, right?
It is on final.
Yeah.
So what I
Roger,
go ahead.
Mr. Desiderio, just to be clear, it's not being introduced, it's for final passage. So what do you guide? What do you recommend?
Well, Mr. Dappas, I have no idea what the other members of the committee want to do. I heard the mayor speak, I guess, in opposition to it, but I have no idea what the other four members of the committee want to do. The normal process is that we put it out and we introduce it, and then there could be a motion to carry it or whatever, but this procedurally is not the normal way we would handle an ordinance.
Okay, so what we can do then is we can we'll carry through with the process, the formal process. We'll vote on it. There's a discussion, and then we can have this as a general body in the discussion part of the process.
Right, and after that discussion, if somebody wants to move that it be carried for 2 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever, then that would be appropriate. But at this point, we haven't even put it on the table for discussion.
Understood. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Desiderio. Okay, so I will now close the public comment. We've heard from the public. And now I will entertain a motion to move this ordinance. Ms.
Well,
Adams.
yeah, I'm on the agenda to move it. I'll move it, but I agree with your comments. So I move that this ordinance be passed on final reading with the clerk to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the town Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law. That was without a script. I'm just saying.
Awesome. May I get a second, please?
So the purpose of moving it along.
For discussion.
Yeah, so what Ms. Adams was saying is that we would move it on, we'll second it, and then we would have a discussion. And in that discussion, we could decide at that point what the next steps would be per what was discussed by Mr. Desiderio.
So I'll second it. I do not support this resolution, but I second it.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. All right, so now we'll have a discussion. Start there, Mr. DeLuca. He seconded it. He doesn't support this.
Thank you. To my knowledge, this did not come before the Engineering and Public Works Committee.
Correct.
Number one. Number two, the property in question, 775, has a fairly large parking lot, a driveway. And the difficulty is the individuals coming in and out of the driveway. So this is one way to try to create a no parking area there so that the people would be able to get in and out of the driveway. It's been a long-standing problem. The part of the difficulty of this particular site is there are two properties across the street that do not have driveways. And both of those properties, actually one just put a driveway in, but up until a couple months ago, both of those properties had parking permits. And that's where they parked, in front of this house and the adjacent houses. So I think this is not the solution. I think we should vote it down completely. We should discuss it as we do most of these at Engineering and Public Works and try to figure out the best solution. Mr. Kittner sent us a memo that talked about putting a parking stripe. That it has always been in the plans with the NV5 plan. We can take a look at that, but I don't think we should move this ordinance.
I agree. I think it needs to go to Engineering and Public Works. I'm not quite sure why it hopscotched over that process, but yeah, I think it just needs further discussion. So it's not to say that we won't pass it in the future, but I think we should just hold off for now.
I agree with Ms. Adams and with Mr. DeLuca. I'm not sure how we got to this point, considering that this has not been discussed at first glance through Engineering and Public Works, which is where we discuss ordinances of this nature ordinarily. And our engineer has recommended that we go back and revisit this area with our traffic consultant, NV5. Let's do that.
Frank, Mayor, you're muted.
You're on mute, Mayor.
My apologies. Mr. Lindbergh, any comments?
No, I agree with what's been said. I'm going to be a no on this, at least for now, until we, till we work this through.
Thank you, Mr. Lindbergh. Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll. Seeing no more discussion, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Adams?
No.
Mr. Dapis?
No.
Mr. DeLuca?
No.
Mr. Lembrick?
No.
Mayor McGee?
No.
Ordinance fails on final passage.
Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We now have another ordinance on final passage.
Yes, Mayor, it's ordinance number 2998-20. An ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank per NJSA 48-445.14.
Right. This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Mr. Waltz, do we have anyone who would like to speak on this ordinance?
No, sir.
Thank you, sir. Hearing or seeing no one, we will close the hearing. Mr. DeLuca, may we please have a motion?
Yes, Mayor. I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Thank you, and I will second it. Any discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Dapis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes, and thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We now have an ordinance on introduction.
Mayor, item number 9, ordinance introduction 2999-20 is an ordinance requiring the conspicuous placement of street address numbers on all buildings in the township of Maplewood. This ordinance is intended to assist public safety personnel in locating destinations to which they are called.
Mr. Dapis, may I get a motion, please?
With pleasure, Mayor. I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on June 2nd. Thank you.
Second.
Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We're now on agenda item number 10, which is reports from departments. As previously noted, we do not have any this evening. So we will move on to agenda item number 11, our administrative reports. We'll now hear from our township administrator, Mr. Veros.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have two items. The first one is the farmer's market. It will begin on June 1st. We've been visiting the site over at 1848 Springfield Avenue. Because of the social distancing restrictions and guidelines from the CDC, we are recommending that the farmer's market relocate to the Yale Corner lot. It works better logistically to ensure that everyone, including the vendors, have a safe distance from the market shoppers. Additionally, the Mobile Now app, parking app, has officially closed. So we're working on a different mobile parking app. We just found out abruptly, unfortunately, that the Mobile Now is not working. So we're working to remedy that. And that's it for my report.
So that was two separate items, right?
Yes.
It sounded like this one item. Anyway, so the Mobile Now, that's just for commuter parking, right? And so since we don't really have anybody to speak of commute, so it's not a huge issue right now.
Our current vendor has its own app, so we're going to move over to that.
Oh, okay. And then to the farmer's market, I've been working with Glenn, Mr. Michalowski on that. And I'll be meeting with him next week to kind of figure out the new location and just to expand on that a little. It was, we're trying to make sure that there's enough room for people to also not have to wait for other people to stop at a vendor to shop, and be able to have enough room to pass by them in the pedestrian walkway, which will sort of be around it. So just to let people know that we're working on making sure that we can carry on with the farmer's market and still have it be safe for everyone, and to be able to still hold it as an essential business.
Right. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule for doing that. I know a lot of what we've done also is your experience, and so thank you. And we're working on signage to make sure that when you are crossing, you're using the crosswalk, and that there's proper signage for the lines and where to go as you're visiting the vendors. So so we'll have that fine-tuned by the end of the week.
Also, just to let the public know that no one will be admitted to the farmer's market without wearing a mask.
Correct. Correct.
Ms. Adams, that's a very good point that you brought up about the mask. One thing we should just state now and throughout this meeting is that when you are patronizing our businesses, and we really want you to do that, of course, and also when you're patronizing the farmer's market, when you're in those retail or transaction situations, you must have a mask. This is not walking down the street. This is businesses. So you must have a mask. Thank you, Ms. Adams.
Mayor, if I may, and Ms. Adams, I just want to add that when we say face mask, we mean face covering. Not everyone has a mask, and please do not order medical grade masks. Let's reserve those for our first line responders. Any face covering will do.
That is correct, Mr. Daffis. Face covering. If you have a mask, great. If you don't, you can use a scarf, a handkerchief, whatever works. I have 2 masks myself. So.
Do we have another meeting? We don't have another meeting before the market opens on June 1, right?
We do not.
So I just want people to pay attention just for the public's benefit. There will be different rules. There will be controlled entry and exit to the market. You won't be able to just come and go as you please. We may be restricting to one person per family. But once the rules are finalized in the next week or so, they'll be posted at the farmer's market. We may be having people line up down the sidewalk and keeping 6 feet apart. We want to make it as efficient as possible for people to shop and get what they want without having to wait too long, but also to be safe. So you'll be required to be 6 feet apart. The vendors may very well be the only ones. We're not positive on this yet, but they may be the only ones who can touch their own product. So you'll be sort of shopping with the vendor and having them help you, rather than the typical way where you go and pick up tomatoes or whatever and look at it. They'll be working out their own methods as well. So and the rules, by the way, may change for the public's knowledge. They may change from week to week until things are tested, and we ask for everyone's patience in trying to get this up and running in a safe manner for everyone to shop at. But at the same time, we need to be fluid and flexible with the rules so that we can see from week to week what's working and what's not working. And those things may be changed from week until we figure it all out. But just be aware that it's not going to be business as usual. As far as visiting the market, it's not a socializing event anymore. So you're just going there to shop and get your fresh produce and other items there. So just be cognizant of that.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Does anyone have any additional questions or comments for Mr. Viveros?
Mayor, I just wanted to reiterate, I'm sure Ms. Viveros is on this already. We want to commend Ms. Adams for her work on the farmers market. This is really important. It's one of the highlights of our summer season. I just want to make sure that when the guidelines are available, that we post them on our website, on our landing page, so people can access those very, very quickly before they show up at the farmers market. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. Mr. Viveros, anything else? Okay, thank you. Mr. Desiderio.
Yes, Mayor.
Do you have a report this evening?
I have nothing to report, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Desiderio. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Desiderio, though? Hearing none, Mr. Desiderio, you are off the hook. Ms. Fritzen, you have the floor. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Ms. Fritzen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to speak about the primary election. Primary election day for Tuesday, July 7th, 2020. And Governor Murphy issued Executive Order 144, ordering the July 7th primary election be conducted primarily by vote by mail ballots, with at least one polling location open in each municipality. Vote by mail ballots will automatically be sent to all active, registered Democratic and Republican voters without applying for the vote by mail ballots. Vote by mail applications will automatically be sent to all active voters who are registered as unaffiliated and all inactive registered Democrats, Republicans, and unaffiliated voters. All vote by mail applications and return envelopes will have prepaid postage. Again, in addition, each county must open at a minimum at least one polling place in each municipality. I also wanted to give another date that the deadline to register to vote, if you are not a registered voter, shall be Tuesday, June 16th. And on June 16th, like always, the office of the Maplewood Township Clerk will be open on that date until 9 p.m. In addition, the Commissioner's office in Newark. But again, for Maplewood residents, we do stay open till 9 p.m. on that final voter registration day, which again is Tuesday, June 16th.
Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Fritzen?
Yeah, I just want to clarify. It was a little confusing the way you said it. So does every resident, as long as they're registered to vote, receive a mail-in ballot?
Active voters who are registered as even unaffiliated, and all inactive registered Democrats, Republicans, and unaffiliated voters will get a vote by mail application with a return envelope with prepaid postage.
So they'll get an application too.
I don't think that's accurate.
That's not true. Yeah.
Okay,
Correct.
so
I didn't think that.
Go ahead,
the
Vic.
what the governor said is that those voters who are registered Democrats will receive a Democratic Party ballot. Those who are registered Republicans will receive a Republican primary ballot. Those who are unaffiliated will receive a vote by mail application.
Okay, that's why I was, and this is just because it's a primary, and in New Jersey, you can only vote in the party that you're affiliated with. So.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
So the same will not be true. Do we know what will happen for the November election?
We do not.
Okay.
So again, as far as a polling place for the township, that is to be determined, possibly 2 polling places in the township. It's the county that makes a recommendation. Of course, they will speak directly with us for recommendations, I'm sure.
So we have a
So again,
follow-up OEM meeting on elections on the 27th. And by then we'll have more guidance from the county and from the governor's office as to what we should be doing.
Correct. Unless there's any other questions, that concludes my report.
Mayor, you're on mute.
Twice tonight. That now concludes administrative reports. And we'll now move on to agenda item number 12, which is reports from elected officials. Mr. DeLuca, we will hear from you first, sir.
Thank you. I only have one item, and that is this Thursday night at 7:30. The Hilton Neighborhood Association is having its first ever Zoom in 25 years, Zoom meeting. And the guests will be Mayor McGehee and our health officer, Candace Davenport. And all are invited to attend.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. I'm looking forward to Thursday night. Mr. Limbrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too will keep my report to one item, and that is to report out the Public Safety Committee met last week with the chiefs and deputy chiefs of both departments, and I know in what we anticipate will be a difficult fiscal year, it was actually really good to hear from them that overtime in both departments has actually been at a historic low. In fact, the first 4 months of this year for the fire department were the 4 lowest months of overtime in the past 5 years. After asking the chiefs whether those statistics, may have been a mathematical error, or there may have been some sort of typo, they assured me that no, that actually the men and women have been coming into work. They have been canceling vacations. They have been taking fewer sick days than usual. That everyone is committed to coming in right now. That they understand how important it is that they come in to keep our community safe. So at a time when when stress on them is really highest, they recognize that they're needed, and they are coming in, and it's both great that they're there, and we have full shifts, but also that we're not having to fill in with overtime, which is saving us money as a township. So I want to, I thank our men and women of the fire department and the police department for everything they're doing, but I particularly wanted to report out to the community that that these brave men and women are showing up for work, not just as usual, but at a higher rate than usual. They're not taking sick days, they're not taking vacations. Their dedication to the township is unwavering, and very much appreciated by those of us who regularly work with them with the township. So that's my report, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Lindbrake. Mr. Daffis.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few items to report on. I'd like to highlight the county's emergency food distribution event first. That's happening this Thursday, starting at 10 a.m. in Newark at the Donald Payne School of Technology, which is at 498 544 West Market Street. This is drive-in only, no walk-ups, no buses. Enter on South 11th Street in the rear of the school building. It will be rain or shine. All are welcome. No questions asked. People will not be allowed to exit their vehicles, only to pump their trunk, where the food will be delivered into the car. And they will be there starting at 10 a.m. Please don't arrive earlier than that. Until they go through all of the boxes. They're hoping to get through about 1,000 boxes of food to be distributed on a first come, first served basis. And they will continue doing this. More such distribution events will happen in the near future. Of course, we will announce those. If you're not tuning in here in Maplewood on Thursday night to the Hilton Association's first ever Zoom meeting, how exciting, please join us at the Community Coalition on Races event on Thursday night, starting at the same time at 7:30 p.m., also on Zoom, to talk about certain issues that are pertinent right now during the pandemic and access to resources and all kinds of pertinent information. We have Kate Cahill, who will be talking about food insecurity and the OLS pantry drives. We have Dr. Ronald Taylor, our superintendent for school district, will be talking about school district concerns. And yours truly will also be presenting various resources related to housing assistance here in Maplewood and throughout the state. 7:30 p.m. Thursday. Please register. There is a link circulating out there in social media, and you can find it as well on the twotowns.org, the Community Coalition's website. I wanted to report the latest on our senior support efforts. Things are going really well. We have to date spent close to $10,000 on food assistance and transportation. We are finding that transportation is becoming more necessary for a lot of our seniors, and these are trips to doctors. And we've been doing what we need to do to ensure that our seniors are getting to and from their medical appointments. We are keeping people engaged during the pandemic through exercise classes, music, and even emotional support sessions. We have about 11 classes of this nature a week. So plenty of opportunity to stay engaged during this time of social isolation. Fresh food to low-income seniors is being provided via the OLS food pantry. Thursday delivery is when it happens, and that is when they do bulk deliveries to ensure that everyone is getting fresh produce and other fresh food. And we have helped more than 12 households with Meals on Wheels program through Krill Care, which is a county-provided service for disabled and low-income seniors. So I'm really proud of our efforts in that regard. My last report pertains to the MVA, the Maplewood Village Alliance. We will be talking more this evening through Mr. DeLuca and Ms. Adams and their leadership on reopening and what it's going to look like for our restaurants and our retail and what we can do, the creative solutions we must take to ensure that all of our businesses can recover. I just wanted to mention that in a recent call with merchants, we learned that merchants are starting to hear about some of these initiatives that we're going to talk about tonight, and they're excited about them. And there's a lot of support out there for some of the things that we're going to be talking about during our discussion agenda. I also wanted to highlight a request from some of our fitness centers on both sides of town, from the Springfield Avenue Partnership and from the MVA. The fitness centers are going to be a challenge, right? And probably between stages 2 and 3 in the reopening. A lot of our fitness centers are small indoor rooms, and that's still going to be a no-no even when we reopen. And they're trying to find creative ways to continue business, possibly in the parks. And they've asked us to consider using the Maplewood municipal building facilities for those opportunities as well. The Woodland, the Bergdorf, and so on and so forth. And of course, that's going to depend on how we coordinate that with summer camp opportunities, if and when those occur, and how those occur. Also something we'll be discussing tonight. But I just wanted to put it out there on everyone's radar that, we spoke to Baker Street Yoga, for instance, which usually can accommodate up to 24 persons during any one class. They, under what expect to be capacity restrictions, will only be able to accommodate about 6 people. So that's a major reduction from 24 to 6. We've heard the same from Chase Fitness. We've heard the same from Studio 509 over on Valley Street, not to forget them. They're sort of on their own over there. And we've heard the same from other fitness centers and our gyms on Springfield Avenue. So it's something that we need to think about and consider as we think creatively and take the leadership role as we do to ensure that all of our businesses can recover during the future that is near, very, very near, in a new normal that we've never, ever had to deal with before. And that is my report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. Ms. Adams.
Yes, just real quick as a reminder, as more people have been working from home, I particularly, maybe because I'm the leaf blower township committee person, have gotten a lot of calls and emails about the use of leaf blowers. So I just want to remind the public and contractors that gas-powered leaf blowers by commercial entities are not permitted any longer, any day of the week through the end of September. So commercial gas-powered leaf blowers are not permitted until October 1. So that includes no matter what industry it is. I've had people. So if you see one using one and you don't like it, you can take a picture or a video with your phone. It'd be time and date stamped and send it to code enforcement, Annette DePalma and John Singleton at the township. You can find their emails online on our website. Also, if you have a landscaper, just remind them because the fines are first offense is 500, second offense is 1,000, and subsequent offenses is $1,500 fines. So we don't want anyone fined that way. So just make sure everybody's obeying the law and not using them at all. So the other thing I was going to report on was farmers market, and we already did that. So I'll wait for the discussion item for the meeting that Mr. DeLuca and I held with the businesses across the township, and we'll be talking about that. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. If there's no objection, I'd like to let our county representative, Ms. Burnett, go ahead instead of me, just in case she needs to leave our meeting. So, Ms. Burnett, if you would like to go ahead and provide your county report, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. At this time, I don't have a formal statement. I just want to reiterate to the residents of Maplewood that I am available. I'm doing everything that I can. I have a lot of moving parts. The agency, Division of Family Assistance and Benefits is moving. And so that's where my focus has been. But the constituents of Essex County is my primary care. If anybody has an issue, they may email me at kburnett, BURNETT, @dfab, D as in David, F as in Frank, A as in Apple, B as in boy, .EssexCountyNJ.org. And I assure you, I will address your issue. I just need until Tuesday, May 26th, because we're moving. But I'm here to address anybody's needs.
Thank you, Ms. Burnett. And
I'm sorry. One other thing. I'm also the morgue keeper, which we don't like to talk about. But if anybody has any issues in the township concerning death, they may email me and I will also address that. I will say that there is a backlog with the cemeteries, but if you have some concerns, you need guidance, I'm here to help.
thank you, Ms. Burnett. I was actually going to mention that, you have a very important and heavy role right now, taking into consideration COVID-19. So thank you for being here this evening. Try to get some rest. I know you're super busy, and we do appreciate you. Did any of my colleagues have any questions for Ms. Burnett? No worries at all.
But I do want to add one more thing. I'm sorry. I'm also known as the Ice Lady, and the Essex County. I'm dealing with the details, the people that are in prison. So if anybody that's in any jail in Essex County that has an issue, you can also contact me with that, because I have a place for them if they're being released. So I have a lot of moving parts, but I'm here.
Thank you, Ms. Burnett.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I will go ahead and provide my report. I have a few items that I just want to provide to the public. First is testing. The county is going to be offering a mobile testing site. It will move around amongst all 22 towns. The first site is this Thursday in Roseland. Next Tuesday, it will be in Cedar Grove. And then a week from Thursday, it will be in West Orange at the Cody Arena. If you go to EssexCovid.org, that's where you can find out how you can register for a test. Even though it is not in Maplewood yet, we're waiting for our date. Any Essex County resident is eligible to receive a test. And there's more information in that regard if you go to EssexCovid.org. And also, regarding testing, they are still doing testing in Newark at Weaver Park. It's from 9 to noon, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. That is ongoing. However, they will not be doing testing this Monday, Memorial Day. Mr. DeLuca has gone and got his test done, which was negative, by the way. We're happy to hear that. And I'm going tomorrow morning, actually. So we're all trying to get tested. And again, EssexCovid.org. The governor has handed out several declarations over the last several days, and I just want to quickly cover a few of them really quickly. And you can find this on the governor's website. But we will be resuming elective surgeries. That's starting a week from tonight. That was Executive Order 145. Also, another executive order is now allowing our community gardens. That was Executive Order 133 to start officially. Also, in that same executive order, he has relaxed some of the restrictions on golf courses. So now 4 people can play golf instead of 2. He's also, in terms of tee times, and he's also allowing the use of caddies, club and equipment rentals, and he's reopening restrooms at golf courses, of course, with disinfecting and hygiene protocols. I also want to thank many residents for reaching out to all of us regarding so many various issues that we looked thoughtfully about reopening. And Mr. DeLuca will be providing a report on several issues in the coming in the meeting later on. But we are looking at various issues such as opportunities to start our shredding program again and things related to DPW. We are looking into and vetting through a thoughtful activity for our Memorial Day. And then also, there's been questions about activities regarding to our expenses related to the township, both operating expenses, capital plans, if you will. And we are looking at everything. And we're not going to talk about the budget in this meeting, but we are continuing to have conversations and we'll keep the public informed of where we're going to make sure that we stay solvent and provide the services that you're accustomed to. A couple other points I should mention about some of the governor's executive orders. As of yesterday, non-essential construction is now has resumed. So for many of you with projects, I know you've been very excited about that, but now you can move forward to the process of getting a permit. Also, curbside pickup for non-essential retail businesses. Some of that is also resumed as of yesterday as well. So, the plan is thoughtful. Things are starting to resume again. But again, I just ask that everyone stay patient, practice social distancing, take your time with this. One more point I want to mention, speaking of patience, and I know it's running out for a lot of our residents, is with unemployment. I was on a call this morning with the Commissioner of Unemployment. He communicated, that he and his team are doing their best. And he's saying the volume is unprecedented, and that's leading to some of the frustrations. If you are having frustration as a resident, please reach out to myself and my colleagues. We are working with our Assembly representatives, Myla Jacey and John McKeon, and their staff to try to provide a person, because one of the biggest concerns we've heard is that people are tired of talking to machines or not getting through to a person. So we will do everything we can as your representatives to put you in touch with people who have greater influence or maybe the greater ability to get you to where you want to go. So please be patient, and thank you for that. So that concludes my report, and that also includes the reports for elected officials. We'll just now slide into the discussion items. Discussion item number 1 is actually myself. I'm going to talk about the 2020 pool season, the 4th of July, and I also want to touch on our tennis courts. So I'll start with the pool. And what I want to say is I'm going to just give a truncated report, and I want to recognize Ms. Mancuso and her staff for putting together an extensive report, which Mr. Limbrick will also talk about other components of as well. I'm just going to focus on the pool, but it was very robust, very detailed, and a lot of thoughtfulness went into making sure that whatever we do we're doing the right thing. The takeaway is that, at this point, we are still trying to have a pool season. We are looking at a early July opening, so after the 4th of July. So it'll be a truncated pool season. All the pools will be open if we do move forward. And we're looking at a strategy of time slots, and we will formalize what those time slots will be. This, like anything else is happening, will be a phased approach. So in a first phase, it will be a very finite population that will be allowed to participate. We're looking at an online sign-up process, and more to come with that as we continue to figure this out. We're looking for direction from the Department of Health, and some of the requirements. So we've looked at what they've already established, and we're continuing to have thoughtful and forward conversations in that regard. Let's be honest, this is not going to be a traditional pool season. Like many things, it's not going to be traditional. But we're going to work diligently to make it, a positive and great experience that we've experienced in the past. And we're following the lines of the governor about the downward trajectory of any type of illness or cases in our township, for a 14-day period. So that's why it's so important to work with our health division and make sure those numbers, are continuing to go down, and everyone's wearing their mask and, and practicing social distancing. And also, part of the report is focused on the general health and safety consideration of our employees. That includes the lifeguards, and many of them are youth, as well as the guests of the pool. So there's expansive bullets in that regard. And the takeaway is that based on the overall assessment provided by Ms. Mancuso, is that we have a 4 to 6 week timeline for launch or opening. And because of that, that provides it with a little more breadth. And so tonight we do not have to make the decision regarding opening the pool in early July of 2020. So we will table that decision tonight and take a couple more weeks to continue to exercise and vet our report, and also continue our conversations with the governor and his office and his team, and get some direction there. But we are looking toward trying to make this happen. And that is the pool where it stands today. Does anybody
Mr. Mayor?
want to say anything?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I did want to say, and as the parent of a competitive swimmer and a proud Mako, it does sadden me to say, but I think the public, the swim season is going to be, the swim team season is going to be canceled. And that's because we're not going to be able to have Mako season this year. And many of the other teams in the area have also already announced that they will have to cancel the season as well. I know South Orange Dolphins have announced that. The team from Springfield announced they're canceling the season. So I think, Ms. Mancuso is on the line. She might know exactly who is canceled and who hasn't, but it seems like over the last couple of days, most teams have canceled the season. So, just so the Mako's parents out there know, and the Makos know, unfortunately, even if we are able to open the pool for part of the season, the Mako swim team season is going to have to be canceled.
Thank you, Mr. Lundberg. And that's right. There are some unfortunate decisions that, based on where we are today, that we do have to make, even if we're able to open the pool. And that is exactly one of those decisions. Ms. Mancuso, if you're on the line, welcome. And if you have anything to add, please feel free at this time.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Okay, you're welcome. I just wanted to add, in case there's manta rays families listening also, that would also go for the dive team season, unfortunately, as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there any other discussion regarding where we are currently with our 2020 pool season? Okay. We'll move on now to our 4th of July. Again, the township has been having numerous meetings and conversations, taking deep and hard looks at what we can and cannot do. And really, we focus on safety first. That's our number one priority during this time. And because of, not being able to guarantee, 100% the safety or the level of safety that we feel comfortable with for all our residents, we are not going to be having a 4th of July celebration this summer. It saddens us all to say that, but again, just understanding, the challenges of keeping social distancing, even in a very broad or sprawled out area, is just not feasible at this time. And we do hope to be back in 2021, but that's where we are right now. Would anyone else like to add to this point? Okay. Well, thank you. And then the last thing I want to touch on here in this discussion report is that the governor has signed an executive order opening up tennis for clubs effective this Friday. And we as a township feel that it's important that if there's opportunities to play tennis in clubs, there should be opportunities to play tennis as the public. So we are moving forward with the plan to open up our tennis courts here in the township of Maplewood on Friday. We are also aligning with our sister town of South Orange, and they will be doing the same. We are going to provide a handful of rules regarding the opening so that we again can align with our number one priority, which is the safety of our public. So we're asking for individuals to maintain social distancing. Games will be singles only. The court hours will be from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. We're asking for 1 hour maximum court time so that people are respectful and give others the opportunity to play or participate. Stay on your same side of the court, so don't switch ends like they do in professional matches. Please use your own equipment, tennis balls, tennis rackets, etc., and mark your equipment so you know which tennis ball belongs to you and your family. Also, don't congregate near the courts or on the courts. Again, we're trying to have that social distancing in place. And face coverings are recommended prior to and after playing. It's hard to play with face coverings or a face mask. We understand that. But when you're done with your physical activity, we ask that you wear that, especially in our parks. Although depending on your style of game, if feasible, try to avoid the net game because that does kind of get in that gray area of social distancing. But we felt that if the governor had opened up tennis courts, in our clubs, and I understand our clubs are moving forward with opening their courts, that we wanted to make sure we had equality across our township and have this opportunity as well. Any additional comments or discussion?
Mayor, this is Dean, Deputy Mayor Daffis. I just wanted to support that which you just stated. I think it is the equitable thing to do. But the governor's executive order opening up tennis recreation in the clubs also comes with a whole bunch of necessary guidelines that need to be followed, including some necessary sanitary guidelines in terms of providing a Purell station and so on and so forth. So we just want to coordinate this with Ms. Viveros and through our Engineering Public Works Director to ensure that we can safeguard the public while they're playing on public courts.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. Yeah, we definitely have looked at some of those inherent challenges when it comes to hand sanitizers and other type of products. One of the things that we have is a challenge, unfortunately, in a public environment versus say more, finite environment, that those products will walk, and they're at high demand right now. So there was a conversation about setting up stands and having those types of things available. But part of the narrative that will go out is asking for residents to be mindful and to bring their own sanitary or disinfecting products for when they do play. So yeah. Any other questions regarding tennis? Okay. Well, that concludes my discussion item report. Mr. Librick, would you like to talk about kids camps and other recreational programs?
Yes, and actually, if Ms. Mancuso is still on the line, I think she's actually in the best position to talk about the status there. So I would really just be trying to convey what she knows best.
Hi. So I think the plan we're trying to lay out for Kids Camp is the theme is safe and slow and very deliberate. And we're hoping to be able to open a smaller version of the typical Maplewood Kids Camp with a lot of outside activities and small groups. And this is in tandem with our health officer, of course, this plan, and allowing a maximum of 50 children per week, which is a great reduction compared to our normal camp program.
Please continue, Ms. Mancuso.
Okay. So our plan is, again, we don't have guidance from the state yet. So, we're waiting to hear that phased in approach, but we would be communicating with parents, and of course be having all kinds of safety measures for our staff and the campers, so we can have a safe, a much smaller camp season with more outside time and small groups of 10, and not, there wouldn't be field trips included in this plan. And it would be no pool time would be another change. So it would be a lot of communication with the parents and a lot of training for our staff, but we are confident that we could have a safe and smaller and maybe more outdoor time in the groups of 10 type camp season for this year. We know a lot of people are getting ready to go back to work. And we do think it's important that the kids get outside and socialize this summer.
Thank you, Ms. Mancuso and Mr. Limbrick. Do you want anything else to add at this point?
No, I think that she covered it very well, and obviously this is still an issue that we need to await some guidance on before we finalize plans. But it's something that Ms. Mancuso and her team were very much on top of, and I thank them for continuing to work with us here. It's a moving target.
Well, I wanted to just elaborate, if I can, that we also have the same plan for Funky Fun Art Camp along with our tennis camps. So those are 3 camps that we think we could do a scaled back version in a very safe and controlled way. So tennis, Funky Fun Art, and then Kids Camp Maplewood.
Thank you, Ms. Mancuso. And again, as Mr. Limbrick said, thank you for your work, yours and Mr. Walton's work as well on this report. It's excellent. It provides a lot of information and a lot of things, answers a lot of questions that we all had, as a committee, and also it's given us it's fluid It's a working document, and it gives us the opportunity to keep going back and making tweaks and vetting through it until we're at the at launch point. So thank you for your efforts on this, you as well as Mr. Walls. So thank you. All right, I think we're going to move on now to our next discussion item, number 3. Mr. Daffis, you do have the floor.
You're on mute, Mr. Daffis.
Sorry about that, and thank you, Ms. Adams. I said that we should be able to cover number 3 and number 4 very quickly. As you noticed, I did not provide a summary proceeding our meeting tonight of both legislations here, and I did not provide draft resolutions for us to consider for our consent agenda tonight, and that's because relief legislation right now is a moving target. It's changing every day. We have found out, for instance, that our state legislation A3948, which is being moved by Assemblywoman Timberlake, is suffering from various amendments. And while other similar state legislation, as it relates to rental assistance and mortgage forbearance, is moving forward on the Senate side, as you can imagine, there is some political jockeying going on. Imagine that in New Jersey. And so on a housing call earlier this week or late last week, I forget what day it is now, we found out that Governor Murphy has convened legislators to come together and to come to an agreement as to one bill that would meet everyone's needs, instead of having at least 3 bills that are currently being considered and floating around in each respective house. So I'm going to hold off our passing a resolution in support of 3948 because 3948 can look a lot different than it does now in the end, or it can be an entirely different bill. Let's see what happens. Similarly, at Congress, the Emergency Rental Assistance and Rental Market Stabilization Act, there's a lot of promise about this legislation. It is one of the most progressive legislation we've seen in a really long time. But again, in a call a couple of days ago with Senator Menendez's office, I found out that this is also something that may be either scrapped entirely or supplemented through one of the various other relief bills, including Mr. Menendez's proposed bill right now. So I will keep the governing body advised, and I will certainly come back to this and ask us to support the legislation once we know what it looks like in a more final form as it moves forward, and advocate for our supporting it. But at this time, I think we should sort of lay low and see what happens. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. 2 times over there. Appreciate that. We'll now move on to agenda item number 5. Mr. DeLuca and Ms. Adams will give us a report on their hard work in regards to helping our small business sector.
So why doesn't Ms. Adams start giving an overview of what we did, and then I can go deal with some of the specifics? That works?
Sure. So we held a meeting with 40 people representing different genres of business throughout Maplewood. We also had the SID directors and 2 board chairs of the SIDs were present as well, Springfield Avenue Partnership and Maplewood Village Alliance. And it was a very productive meeting, I thought. We met last Friday. We talked about basically what we wanted from the businesses was information to help inform the township committee and the SIDs, but for our purposes, inform us for what we can do to help reopen. As we know, there are restrictions that are state mandated that we will have to follow, of course, but we want to know what we can do from a township's perspective to help the businesses open the best they can. For example, we know that food businesses, food establishments, restaurants, and the like are most likely not going to be able to open at full capacity, which is extremely difficult for a business like a restaurant to survive and thrive when they can't use half their seats. So we're talking about, and Mr. DeLuca will go into some of the things specifically, but we talked about how can we help? Do we utilize public space? Do we utilize street areas to be able to expand in good weather? The restaurant's capacity to safely serve customers and essentially open up their dining room to the outdoors. Right now, our ordinance requires for outdoor dining, those who do it can only do it in front of their own physical brick and mortar store, restaurant. So we're looking at ways to help make that safe by allowing for 6 feet of distance between tables and how we can do that. So we're not alone in this, as all of you know from some of the articles and what other towns are doing and what other cities, not only in New Jersey, but across the world as we try to reopen globally and help our restaurants do the best they can. So we're talking about everything from utilizing currently underutilized parking, like the commuter lots for customer parking, while we take other parking away, like on street, in order to allow expansion of table service in front of restaurants. That's something we need to consider and we need to talk about. There's many municipalities are just making streets pedestrian only in their business districts, whether that's all the time or on weekends, whatever. So there's so much we can do and so much to think about because everything impacts everything else, as we know. So what's good for one type of business may not be great for another type of business, but we all need to work together. And knowing that this is a very fluid and ever-changing situation, we need to be prepared to, just like I was talking about before with the farmers market, we need to be prepared from even week to week to massage some of the things that we try to do to help our businesses reopen successfully. So I'll leave it there. Vic, and you can go into what we were talking about with regard to changing by resolution, changing some of the things, and then talk about some of the things that we need to discuss before we can figure out what we're doing.
Thank you. One thing I did want to say is that what was remarkable about the call was how committed all the businesses were to the community. We see different protests around the country. We see people in this state saying, I'm going to open my business no matter what. The call and the tone of the call was very thoughtful. It was not only about their concern about their business, but a concern about their workers, their families, and their customers and clients. And I think that says a lot about our business community here in Maplewood. We're going to recommend a bunch of steps to take because they are, I think, doing everything that Ms. Adams talked about, is advancing a very bad situation, making it as workable as possible. A couple of things, though. We can make these changes because we are in an emergency, under an emergency declaration, so we can take some actions which normally might take a longer time to process, but we can move forward. All of the actions we take and all of the openings that would happen after these actions are dependent on the governor and the state of New Jersey allowing these things to happen. We can't just say, go out and do things. We have to wait for the green light from the state. But we, as Ms. Adams said, we want a plan and we want to be in place, in a place that we can do that. And then we're also talking about these are going to be done by resolutions because they're immediate and they deal with the short-term solution here, rather than change ordinances, which will take longer. And we don't know what the needs are going to be next year or the year after that. So what we're proposing to do is to move by ordinance under the emergency declaration provisions. We've talked with our attorney about that. He is comfortable with that direction. So the first thing is the outdoor dining. As was said, we have an outdoor cafe. And just one other thing is we're trying to build on things we have already because that makes it easy. We can take what we have, massage it a little bit and move forward. So we have outdoor dining ordinance, which allows for outdoor cafes. Right now, we define those as right in front, immediately in front of an existing food service business. What we're recommending is that we expand that definition to allow 100 feet on either side of the primary entrance of that food service business. So just to give you an example, Roman Gourmet, right now they have seats right in front of the pizza place. If we were to have this, they would be able to go 100 feet, say towards the movie theater, set up tables that way. Able Baker might be able to do the same thing. Set up tables either in front of that little building where the insurance company was, or even extend seats towards Baker Street. So those are some of the real terms. And what we're thinking is the governor is going to say you have to reduce seating inside at least by 50%. So by putting more tables on the sidewalk, these merchants will be able to pick up some of that seating. We now have an ordinance that requires 4 foot of unobstructed paved surface between the tables and the curb, so pedestrians could get by. I did put in here 6 feet, but I had a conversation with someone earlier today that made me think, are we going to be able to achieve that? And should we keep it at 4 feet because it's a passageway and maintain the tables at 6 feet apart? But I think if we require a 6 foot buffer between the tables and the curb, we're not going to be able to accomplish what we're trying to do. So I would like to change this recommendation to maintain the 4 foot unobstructed paved surface, but make sure that the tables are spaced at least 6 feet apart, measured from the back of each chair. So
Yeah.
there'd be.
I was just going to say, I was wondering about the 6 feet of whether you had the 6 feet, distancing in mind when you put that down. And
I did.
Yeah. Whereas
I think
they're just walking by.
I think in the village, it's not going to work. I think on the avenue, it's probably a little wider. So I think we ought to leave it at 4 feet and watch it, but make sure the tables are 6 feet. And also encourage the outdoor businesses to share. And I'm thinking of Springfield Avenue, where we have the Chinese restaurant on the corner of Park and Springfield, and next to it is Pimento Grill. Well, maybe they want to jointly put tables out so that they could have customers of both places sit out there for maybe a couple 100 feet, which would be, something nice to see. Same thing goes that you would have to get the approval of the property owner and the business owner of the adjacent property. So right now, if you have it in front of you, you have to get the approval of the business owner. Of the property owner. Now, some of that, the property owner is us. We are the property owner as the town. Some of that is the individual who owns the property. So we'd have to look at the deeds and who owns what. But there are issues of insurance and permission here and liability. And I think we ought to be consistent and have the approval of both the adjacent business to make sure they're comfortable of having those chairs out and tables out there, plus the property owner. We do not in the outdoor cafes allow signs to be put there. I'm suggesting that we allow signs with the approval of the SIDS. And the kind of signs I'm talking about are not like Eat at Joe's. It's maintain social distance, keep 6 feet apart, those kinds of things. And again, there may be things that come up, and I think it's best to let the partnership and the alliance figure that out. Now, this is a bit of a change. The next thing is, right now we require an outdoor cafe to pull all those chairs and tables in at night. If we're going to have them put more tables and chairs out, it's going to be difficult for them to gather all those and store them into their existing buildings. So what I'm suggesting is that they gather all those and store them securely in front of their property on the sidewalk, making sure at all times there's still 4 feet of passageway. And again, these would all be done by resolution, and they would expire at the end of the year. So this is not a long-term commitment. This is something under the situation that we have here. The license procedure would be the same way. You fill out a form with the clerk, and there would still be insurance. You still have to give us 3 plans of what you want to do and all that. So that would be the outdoor cafe piece. Then there's a patio dining, and some of you remember we had a patio dining at Yale Corner. We had patio dining in the Village Coffee, where we close that parking lot, put tables out, maybe have music, string some lights, and it becomes a festive place for at night. So there would be no change in doing that on a periodic basis, and the ordinance now says you can do that up to 2 nights a week. But in addition, what we're suggesting is in Rickleton Square and at Yale Corner, that the 2 special improvement districts would be able to have patio dining unlimited. So they'd be able to set those up as permanent patio dining places for the balance of the year. And that again would allow somebody to go maybe over to the Chinese restaurant, say Bill and Harry's, and then go across the street to Rickleton and eat, or go to HLS and go across the street to Yale Corner and eat. So that's another way to create outdoor dining space that would be under the responsibility of the 2 special improvement districts and be sort of a food court where people could bring or have even food delivered. You could have a pizza delivered, or you could have beer and wine delivered from one of the local beer and wine places. Let's see. Again, there for the patio dining, you wouldn't have to remove the furniture in Rickleton or Yale Corner. I'm going to just keep going through. Is this okay how I'm doing this?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Then the streets and sidewalks. Now we're shifting from food to retail goods and retail services. And we really do not, except for sort of these one-off situations, we do not allow a retail place to put their merchandise on the sidewalk in front, unless they get a sidewalk sale permit. And then you have to do that every time. What we're suggesting here is there may be retail places, and we heard it on the call, that would like to have the opportunity to put some material, put some of their product on the street. There may be service providers that would like to provide some of that service. It may be a salon. I'm not sure. We'd have to take a look at the laws for that. But there may be a way that the governor's office is going to come out that you can do some salon work outside or nails outside. So maybe there's a way to allow some of that to be done outside so that they can maintain the social distance inside, but capture some of that on the outside. So what's suggested here is that retail business and services could display merchandise in front. I would add or provide services out front, and that they would, be able to do that as a one-time. You do a blanket waiver. It says here blanket approval for 90 days. I would make that 120 days. So you fill out a form with the clerk's office. You say for the next 120 days, I would like to have a blanket permission to put goods and services out on the sidewalk in front. I have to take everything in at night. I have to maintain I have 6 foot, I would change that back to 4 foot of unobstructed paved surface and go from there. And then I have just a couple more things on the public property. This goes to 2 things. One is we give the special improvement districts the opportunity to sponsor market sales days. These could be thematic, where you could have, say, a fitness day at Yale Corner, or you could have a salon day at Yale Corner, or you could just have a retail day, home furnishing or something like that at Yale Corner or Rickleton Square. These again would be just for the improvement districts to sponsor these market days. Then this gets to what Mr. Daffis was talking about a retail service business, like a gym, a yoga place, karate place, art classes, to be able to use our public parks, public spaces. So it could be, again, Yale Corner, it could be Rickleton, it could be Maple Crest, it could be Memorial, it could be a tennis court. We heard on the call that to do yoga on the grass is not as, functional as to do it maybe in a tennis court. So now that we opened the tennis, it's maybe a little difficult, but there's that kind of an idea. But this again would allow some of the businesses to use our outdoor space to provide their business, their services. All this, by the way, we would always maintain the $1 million insurance policy that we require now. It's just, I'm sure Mr. Desiderio would chime in and say we'd have to have that as a minimum, that we have to protect ourselves. Last 2 things that I have here for suggestions, just on the parking, we know there's going to be a lot of curbside parking, curbside activity. This just makes it clear that the special improvement districts will work with the police chief, and the police chief, as he is right now, is authorized to make some changes to the parking rules. And this would allow him and the special improvement districts to set up in places that they've identified the ability to have these curbside pickups. And then lastly, on the signage, we have restrictions on signage. For example, you can't have a banner up. If you're having a sale, you can only have it up for 30 days. You have an opening, you can only have it up for so much time. I think in the beginning here, some of these businesses are going to want to put signs up that they're open. What we're saying here is just gives the 2 improvement districts the ability to work with the business owners to come up with sign waivers, and businesses outside would work with Annette De Palma and the Department of Community Development. I didn't really deal with parklets or street closings. Street closings, we can do at any time. So we don't have to change any, that can be done. That's just an event application. Parklets, I think, is it's a higher hurdle. I think we need to kind of have more of a conversation about it. Lastly, on alcoholic beverages, Mr. Desiderio and I had a call today to follow up with the ABC to follow up on our liquor license, and you'll get a memo about that. But we took the opportunity to ask about questions like we got from some of our businesses. If the business wanted to set up in the parking lot, could they do that? The answer is, if it is not a licensed premise at the time that the license was approved, then they cannot do that. But what they told us was right after our call, they were having a meeting to allow for these temporary emergency expansions. So the ABC is going to come out with something soon that's going to allow for some of this expansions in adjacent properties. They'll be approved by the state ABC with the approval of the police chief, the local police chief, and the local township clerk. So that would deal with a property like we heard on Milburn Avenue, where they wanted to put some chairs and tables in their parking lot, which is considered an adjacent property to the licensed premise. So that's it.
Okay, I have a couple things. Can you hear me? Because I had to get off my
Yes.
computer and go on my iPad. Okay, so I think this committee, we need to think also about,
I don't think we should try to overcomplicate parklets by constructing, because they can be complicated to construct. And if we think of them as relatively temporary, they don't need to be fancy. We just need to be safe. So, and because we're doing this by resolution, and because our sidewalks are relatively narrow in most areas, where you'd be lucky under normal circumstances to have a couple two tops or four tops out there. There's whether it's in the village or on Springfield Avenue, there's not a lot of space. So I'd like to consider, short of closing the streets to any street, in particular Maplewood Avenue or whatever, to vehicular traffic, I'd like everyone to consider and discuss specific removal of parking in certain on-street parking spaces that are directly in front of, food establishments, so that we can effectively expand the sidewalk using those parking spaces, which are, 20 feet long. Standard parking spot is 8.5 to 9.5 feet wide and about 20 feet long. So if you think of that in front of, say, Coda as just an example, because they don't have a lot of sidewalk space, that we could in some way have them enclosed without necessarily building a flooring that would eliminate the step down, but rather just using the surface of the street where possible. I mean, if a business wants to construct a parklet, then that's a whole nother thing. But I'd like to consider being able to do this in different, whether it's in front of Coda or the gate or, any of the restaurants in the village and any of the restaurants on Springfield Avenue. And they're probably two different conversations a little bit because of the nature of the streets. But I think without necessarily closing the street to vehicular traffic, which may be something we want to do anyway, just closing Maplewood Avenue to vehicular traffic, because you can get around without having to be on the avenue and come different directions. So that's obviously a little complicated. So that's why I was saying, could we just, in spots where they're, needed, open up some of those on-street parking spaces, whether the side street or Maplewood Avenue. Of course, not on the side where like Arturo's is, that wouldn't be possible, or the bagel place, because there's no parking on that side. So that would require vehicular.
So Ms. Adams, I think that's a really good point. And, as I was reading through this document and hearing Mr. DeLuca go through it again, I thought about chapter 187.6, we're talking about the outdoor cafes. I think it's public knowledge that there's been a history where, for example, the gate has tried to open up, in front of them, and I supported it, but the property owner has not. So to your point, I'd like to see us use the street, which I would assume he doesn't own, to provide, the gate with that opportunity at this time to mitigate some of this,
Yeah, and whether we take just the spaces right in front, or to Mr. DeLuca's point, where, we're going to try to expand with permission of those businesses, maybe we take, 4 spaces in front, and that would allow, a good number of outdoor dining tables. The side streets might be a little more easy to do. I don't know.
Well,
you guys have discussed.
I mean, again, I think it's a great point. And again, reading through this, it aligns with what we've talked about, which is safety first, public safety first, but also helping by all means necessary, our business owners and our merchants. So I do like that idea. I like most of these ideas. I'm in favor with most of these ideas, and we can vet through some more of them because, again, it aligns with those 2 points I just made. I'll open the floor for other comments.
I have a few comments, if I may, Mayor. I'll go next. So I want to thank Committeeman DeLuca and Ms. Adams, Committeewoman Adams, for the dive here. These are great. And, as Mr. DeLuca said, we have to be ready and we have to be creative. And these are emergency measures that we are taking because of the situation. So keeping that in mind, I have a couple of thoughts. The one issue that I had has already been addressed, and that was the what Mr. DeLuca mentioned in the very beginning of his presentation, the 6 feet unobstructed paved surface for pedestrians, and that may not be workable everywhere, especially not in the village. So we're staying at 4 feet, and that makes a lot of sense. But the one thing I wonder if there was further discussion and consideration about is exactly what the mayor alluded to, which is the idea of requiring property owner permission where necessary because the sidewalk is not owned by the township, and also adjoining property owner or adjoining businesses permission as well. And I'm wondering if we could consider, since this is a state of emergency sort of measure by resolution and not a permanent ordinance change, I wonder if we could suggest that this would be by notice to the property owner and notice to the adjoining businesses in order to get this to be viable for everyone. Because as the mayor already stated, we have a couple circumstances that we know of in which historically the property owner has withheld permission about something like this. They may not do that under the current state of affairs, but they may. And we hope that all businesses will play nice together. We certainly have seen great solidarity among our small businesses during this period, but who knows? And certainly when we talk about sidewalk sales and non-food establishments, they're not required to get the permission of their next door neighbors who may be a restaurant. They just need to apply, and the application under these measures will be approved. So I'm wondering if we might reconsider that as it becomes a restriction that may not allow us to do what we want to do here.
Yeah, I'd love to comment on that, Mr. Davis. I like the idea of not requiring property owner permission for this. With regard to adjacent businesses, that's just a more almost like a courtesy. A retailer may not want tables in front of their store while they're open, for example, but might be fine with it in the evening when they're not open. But I think at least sign off by neighboring businesses. But I'm perfectly in favor of not needing property owner permission for these things. But I think just courtesy and making sure you're not obstructing a neighboring retail establishment or one that wouldn't have tables outside or whatever would be something that was important to do. Whether or not we mandate it is another question. But yeah, I think it'd be great not to have the property owner's permission.
Yeah, I guess Mr. Desiderio might want to chime in here about takings issue, but I mean, I could go either way, but I think we needed to be guided by Mr. Desiderio's legal opinion here.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
I'm not asleep. I'm still here. I am troubled by that, quite frankly. I just don't. I'm just not sure of the rationale for it, quite frankly. I understand what you want to do, but I think that going in front of somebody else's property who may want to do something else with it unnoticed without permission is troublesome to me.
Well,
I just want to clarify.
Temporary thing, right? It's a temporary thing. It's a temporary thing under the state of emergency, right? So it's not a permanent thing. It's only temporary. And not every business may make themselves, may avail themselves of this opportunity, but it's temporary in nature because of the unprecedented circumstances. So does that make you feel better about it, Mr. Desiderio?
Not at all.
Okay, not a
No,
support.
because I don't, the emergency is the suspension of an ordinance that you have placed in effect. Okay, the emergency is not the taking, in theory, of someone else's property. And that I don't believe the emergency justifies that.
Well, and
I
not all of it is private property either. I mean,
Listen, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I mean, we had that whole thing with the one property, and it was like 3 feet of it from the building to the middle of the sidewalk, and whatever it was unclear, and it was historically, and we'd have to survey every property. So I'm not sure I agree with you on that one, Mr. Bill.
So if
Okay,
if the property is public property, then we are the property owner, we can give approval. So that's easy. It's just when the property is somebody else's property, do we have the right to say that somebody can use that?
Well, I don't think we have the right to say that someone can use it, but I think I'm just saying that maybe all we can do is try to talk to the property owner and to the adjoining business owners, or businesses rather, and say that in light of the circumstances, we'd like to have your approval.
Certainly.
Go ahead.
I certainly no problem with that. That's fine, absolutely.
Right.
But in the end, after our jawboning and we try to get them to do it, if they say no, then they say no.
Right, which takes us then to the next measure, which Ms. Adams cued us to, which is the parklets. So in situations like that, maybe this is how we deal with this. We say, okay, well, if the permission was not granted, courtesy was not given, then we are going to allow a parklet in front of, within 100 feet of this food establishment, and allow them to expand their outdoor dining in that manner.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate that if we take away parking on, for example, Maplewood Avenue, or even the side streets, there are still parking lots and the other side of the train station, and New Jersey Transit lots, which won't be overutilized for some time to come, I think. So, I mean, that's what we're surmising. So we may have to lift restrictions or talk with New Jersey Transit about allowing shopper parking. I mean, they already do after 11 a.m., but maybe, we just need to be creative and think about parking that's currently not used, like school parking lot, areas where the schools park. So before everybody panics that we're taking away street parking on Maplewood Village, I just wanted to throw that out there.
So I just,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, I was just going to say that I think safety coupled with helping our businesses, it's clear that this plan is doing that. And thank you, Ms. Adams and Mr. DeLuca. I think what we could do is look at ways to pass these resolutions to present these opportunities. And then in cases like what we mentioned tonight, like with the gate, where we know there might be a discrepancy, there can be a conversation with that property owner. If they decide that they're not in favor of it, then our next step would be a parklet or something which would allow that business owner to do something, but doesn't infringe on that property person's rights. So we can basically work with the property owner to get what's done in the best interest of our business owner. So I think if we present these opportunities or approve these opportunities, this will definitely open up some strategies for business owners on Springfield Avenue as well as the village. And then we would work on some one-offs to see if we can get to their maximum strategy based on some obstacles which may be presented to them.
Yeah, we also talked about policy-wise for the township to expedite any permits that are needed for any of this, whether it's, building out, whether it's a sidewalk cafe or, any of, making sure that that they're adhering to what they need to do, that any permits and for that matter, any permits for exercise classes or scheduling of classes in the parks or wherever be, top of the list and not something that they have to wait to obtain.
Yeah, the beauty there is that's within our power because it's the clerk's
Yeah.
that does that. And so we can, and I'm sure she's listening intently here. We can just impress upon her that these have to be fast tracked. And some of, the food stuff until the governor says outdoor cafes are permitted. And I think it's going to actually come sooner rather than later.
Me too.
I think he may say by the end of the week that after Memorial Day, outdoor dining is going to be permitted. So there is a sense of urgency here. And I would hope that we could, what I was trying to do here is what we could adopt right now, get it done, get the message out to our business people so that they can figure out if they want to do this or not. Because if they want to expand, say Roman Gourmet wants to expand the tables outside, they have to go out and buy tables and figure that out and start talking to people about how that's going to work, or any of the businesses that might.
Although they probably have tables that they can't use inside, they can move outside.
That may be.
Yeah.
I mean, it may be, they can figure that out. But I think we want to send a message right now to those. I don't think the governor is going to allow the yoga places to open yet. I don't think they're going to allow the gyms to open yet. So let's send a message now on May 19th that we can work with you to do those classes with proper social distancing, proper crowd control in our public spaces.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Again, I think we talked about safety and we talked about ways to provide opportunities for our business owners so that they can start to, be more viable or be viable again. And by moving some of this forward tonight, puts them in that position to have the opportunity, choose it or not, to move forward. And then again, like I said, any issues where we run into those roadblocks, we'll just one off them. But let's move forward so that we provide the support that our special improvement districts and all our business owners frankly deserve.
I also wanted to just say, I don't know if Miss Davenport is still on the line, but the businesses were also asking in that meeting for some clarity on, cleaning, like what they have to do. Like one thing we're, separate from the outdoor dining and using our public spaces is cleaning up those public spaces as they're used to the extent to which people will feel comfortable using them, right? Or coming to these places to conduct business. So I think it would be great if there's the ability to get information out to the businesses of sanitizing or maybe they already have it as to what they might need to do. And I know that's going to be evolving as well. I mean, what was nice about the call, other than what Mr. DeLuca mentioned, was the way the conversation went. Some businesses expressed frustration in finding cleaning products and the ability to get materials they need, and other businesses were able to resolve that for them by pointing them in the right direction to where they could get things that they weren't able to find on their own. So they are also working together to help each other out, which was really nice to see. But it'd be nice if we had some guidelines. The other thing I wanted to say is while we might be putting up some curbside signage for curbside pickup, 10-minute, 15-minute parking, whatever for curbside pickup, there was a desire for signage throughout the business districts by the township, and maybe where there's parking restriction signs, we could add other signage to make guidelines clear for customers so that the businesses themselves aren't having to police quite so much the people that they're trying to welcome into their business. So if we have clear signage around was something we may need to do. I know we have some of that in the entrances to the park, but maybe throughout the business districts as we reopen for people to wear masks and keep that physical distance of 6 feet. I think it would be helpful to the businesses that's out there as guidelines for the public. So we may need to look at signage in different areas and different sizes and different places.
I just wanted to, I hadn't finished what I wanted to ask about. Look, we have to do this, right? Because this is coming, like Vic said. It's coming. I also feel it too. It's coming the next couple of days, within the next week for sure. So we have to remember that this is going to be imposed on us. So we're either going to have to do it and be creative and nimble in doing it, or our businesses are going to die. That's it. That's the equation. It's as simple as that. And while we have very valid concerns, we will always put public safety first. And of course, there are legal concerns too. We have to be nimble here because this is being imposed on us. And businesses will have to survive under these new guidelines that will be mandated for us. So we have to do this stuff. There's no question about it. And again, I applaud Vic and Nancy for their deep dive and their expertise here. I only wanted to ask about two things, minor as they are, with respect to the patio dining, which is essentially, as Vic stated, a food court opportunity. We currently require that that's only sponsored by the respective SID. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for a co-sponsorship by one of the businesses if they wish. I don't see a problem with that. Again, everyone will know that this is a food court, so anybody can dine there from any business. But I see opportunities for co-sponsorship here that we may not want to forget about. And the last thing I want to ask about is the parking. The 15-minute curbside parking zones that will be required for curbside pickup. I presume also that these parking rules will also be adopted by emergent resolution and not by our common practice of parking ordinance. Vic?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so at this point, I think we've heard from everyone here. Let's move forward. So can we look at this and
Mayor, can I make a series of motions?
Yes.
Okay. So I would move that Chapter 187-2 be redefined, outdoor cafes be redefined to include 100 feet, within 100 feet of the primary entrance to the food serving establishment, or 100 feet within the public plaza.
Can we get a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Any more discussion? Okay, great. Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daphnis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Mr. DeLuca.
I would recommend we change move that we change Chapter 187-5 eligibility standards to require a minimum of 4 feet of unobstructed paved surface, that tables be spaced at least 6 feet apart, measured from the backs of chairs, and that food serving establishments be encouraged to share outdoor cafes with adjacent businesses.
Can we get a second, please?
I second.
Any more discussion? Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daphnis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrecht,
Yes.
Mayor McGee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen.
On 187-6, I move that outdoor cafes require the approval of the property owner immediately in front of the food serving establishment, and the approval of the adjacent business and property owners to the food serving establishment.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
No.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrecht,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrecht,
Yes. Can you hear me? Yes.
He voted
Mayor
yes.
McGee. Thank you,
Yes.
Mayor McGee.
Yes.
That passes.
I move we amend chapter 187-14, responsibilities of licensees, D, where it says no signs, that signs shall be permitted with the approval of the respected special improvement district. And in E, that food service establishments shall store in a safe and secure manner all outdoor cafe furniture immediately in front of the food serving establishment.
Can we get a second, please?
Second.
Any discussion, further discussion? Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrecht,
Yes.
Mayor McGee.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen.
Chapter 187-20, this is patio dining. B, patio dining space may only be sponsored by the Township Special Improvement District Management Corporations, but may have co-sponsorships, period. Patio dining space shall be limited 2 evenings per week in a publicly owned parking lot, but there shall be no limit to the number of evenings patio dining space may be sponsored in Rickleton Square and Yale Corner.
Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Discussion. Seeing none, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrecht,
Yes.
Mayor McGee.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Mr. DeLuca.
Okay, 187-25. This deals with the patio dining, and this is, again, in 2 places. So within 60 minutes after the closing of the patio dining in a publicly owned parking lot, they have to remove all the furniture, but they shall not be required to remove the furniture of the patio dining in Rickleton Square and Yale Corner. They can leave the furniture there. This is the 2 improvement districts. I move that.
I second it.
Discussion. Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrecht, Mr. Lembrecht, Mayor McGee.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen.
Okay, now we move to retail stores, retail businesses. This is chapter 239 under streets and sidewalks. So I think this might be a typo. It should be 239-28, permit required. This says the township encourages retail businesses and services to use the area immediately in front of their stores to display merchandise, and I would add, and provide services, period, Retail businesses and services may only display those items and provide, and I would add, and provide those services which are sold within their respective stores. Such merchandise may be displayed during regular business hours and shall be removed overnight. And then I would add, a minimum of 4 feet of unobstructed paved surface shall be available at all times for pedestrian traffic.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Second.
Any discussion?
To go to like the store.
Please call the roll, Ms. Fritzen. Thank you.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Mr. DeLuca.
Just in that same section, other requirements, right now, there's a 30-day advance notice. I would eliminate that. There's no minimum notice. We would act on applications as soon as possible. We would waive the $25 fee. And we would give a blanket of event approval. I would change the 90 days to 120 days, which can be revoked if there are violations. And I would add that a business could reapply.
I'll second.
That would be a motion.
Okay, I'll second that one. Any discussion? Great. Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Adams,
You're on.
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen.
In Chapter 206, Public Property, use of public property permit procedure for events held on township property. So this has two aspects to it, and I would move both. First would be the special improvement districts may sponsor market sale days or market sales on public properties within their respective districts. This would be a blanket approval for 120 days. Any fees would be waived and applications would be acted on as soon as possible. And then secondly, and I'm going to change this a little bit as we go through, a local retail service business. And then I would eliminate that as closed to indoor use by orders of the state of New Jersey and may be permitted by the state to operate. I would say a local retail service business may request the use of public spaces to conduct its business operation. A permit must be obtained from the township clerk. Application shall be acted upon as soon as possible. $1 million insurance. There would be a $25 fee per business application, and the application could be for multiple uses of the public space by the business.
I'll second.
Motion, I second it.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. Any discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes. Yes.
Mayor McGee.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We are now on page 4, Mr. DeLuca, parking.
Okay, parking. So currently we have time-limited parking in all of our business districts. This would allow the special improvement district to request the establishment of 15-minute curbside parking zones within their district, identify the areas which would be most appropriate, and the police chief would be authorized to establish the curbside parking zones for a period of up to 90 days, and it could be renewed. In an area outside the special improvement districts, the businesses would make a request directly to the chief.
Second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Any discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll regarding parking.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Daffis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Mr. Duca, our 11th and final resolution, signage.
On signage, so we have design restrictions on design standards and also in chapter 271-56. This would allow businesses within the special improvement district to apply for sign relief to the respective SIDs. The SIDs would decide how to grant that relief, and they would just be able to do that. Businesses outside shall apply for sign relief to the Department of Community Development. I move it.
I second it.
Any discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Oh, there she is.
Mr. Dappis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. And thank you, Mr. DeLuca. Thank you, Ms. Adams. Please.
Yeah, do we need to discuss or pass a resolution with regard to using the street for outdoor dining potentially? Maybe in coordination with the business improvement districts that and the police chief, that such, that parking spaces could be taken by a dining for outdoor dining by an adjacent restaurant or business.
I second it.
Okay.
There you go. Any discussion at all? This helps with the other resolution we passed. Number, where was it? Yeah, quite a few. This does address number
187-6.
yes, number 3. Thank you, Mr. Dappis. So, any other discussion? Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Dappis,
Home run, Miss Adams. Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Thank you, Ms. Adams. And do we want to look at street? Are we good at this point? So I want to make sure we're all set.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to do anything with regard to street closure. I mean, the coordination between the police and the SID and the business would be to put protective barriers around any, dining in parking spaces and make sure they're safe. But
Thank you, Ms. Adams.
That would be covered under the event application. So
Okay.
that could happen anyway.
Ms. Averos.
Mr. DeLuca, could you send me the list of items we just ran through? Because I'm going to need some enforcement. So that's with community development and with DPW to make sure that there's a run through and a program of how we're doing some of these street cleanings and maybe shift our focus. So I want to make sure that although PD and the SIDS are doing a lot of the management of this, there's going to be a lot of enforcement and cleaning up of these areas.
Yes.
Okay.
Good call. Okay, well, again, Ms. Adams, Mr. DeLuca, thank you. This is a dozen resolutions that we passed tonight with a keen focus on helping our businesses. So thank you both for your efforts here. Bravo. And let's let the public know and also the press too about this activity tonight. Thank you. We will now move on to discussion item number 6, which is our OEM or Office of Emergency Management update. Mr. DeLuca.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Few things. Today we issued a declaration to suspend overnight parking through June 30th, 2020. And we expect that this will be the last suspension. We started this on May 17th, suspending the overnight parking restriction. And we believe this will be the last one with parking overnight parking again, being prohibited effective Wednesday, July 1st, 2020. And we will be doing public announcements a minimum of 2 weeks before to make sure everyone's aware of that. I sent out, my second item, I sent out a reimbursement agreement that we received from the county, a memorandum of understanding. I would like to move that tonight so that we could have Ms. Vivero sign it and send it to the county tomorrow so that they can begin. They are going to be meeting on Wednesday, the 27th, the freeholders to approve these. So right after that, we'll be able to start getting reimbursed. The county has allocated $636,472.90 in stimulus funds for Maplewood. This is the CARES Act. This is the federal act that was approved. So this is a big deal. I can tell you just on signing purchase orders, we're spending a lot of stuff on cleanup. And we're going to continue to do that, as those of you who sat in the OEM meetings know that as we talk about operations, cleaning and sanitizing and maintaining protection for our employees and the users of our services are going to be primary. So we're going to continue to have these expenses through the balance of the year. But this was a major opportunity to be reimbursed and have our costs covered. So I'd like to move the reimbursement agreement.
I will second that. Is there any discussion at all? Perfect. Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Liz?
Ms. Fritzen, are you still there?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve our memorandum of understanding for $636,000. It's been seconded, and we'd like to call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Daffis?
Enthusiastic, yes. Get us some money, Vic.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes, under pressure.
Mr. Lembrick? Mayor McGee?
Yes, and that's right, Vic.
All right. Just two other quick things.
Yes.
Talking about library, as the public, we just want to let the public know that the Office of Emergency Management, we've been having briefings. We had a briefing on elections. We had a briefing on the library. We had one on the community services. One of the things that came up in the library is the first phase of service will be curbside service, just like we're talking about with retail and food. So I would like to make a motion that we would change the 30-minute parking in front of the village to, in front of the library to curbside 15-minute parking. Actually, I would make that 10-minute parking because it's just going to be a pick up a book and go. So that would be a motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
She can't see you.
Mr. Daffis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes, and thank you, Ms. Fritzen.
And the last thing, Mayor, I just want to mention that Senator Menendez is pushing forward his bill with Senator Casey of Louisiana. This is the called the SMART bill. It's the State and Municipal Aid for Recovery and Transition. I'd like to have a job of making these names up of bills, but this is the SMART bill. It's $500 billion for states and local governments. And the most important thing here is when the bill was first written, it had a threshold of 50,000 people population. That is being eliminated. So now a town like Maplewood with 25,000 people would be eligible for direct payments. So this is very important, and we need to get behind this. And it also speaks to how important the census is, because so many of these programs are being based on population. And so if we could tie the COVID-19 to the census, this is a real example of how important it is to get the census completed and sent in, because these decisions are being made on the facts and the data that the government has as to how many people live in each of these communities. And with that, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm done.
No, thank you, Mr. Duke. I was just going to say it's a bipartisan bill, and it just shows that it's, because if we have people in need, residents in need, this is, it's got a lot of traction. And you're right, it's like every person counts. If we don't get to 20, we have 25,232 residents from the last numbers I've seen. If everyone doesn't do the census and we would theoretically fall under 25,000, guess what? Our township doesn't get a piece of this $500 billion. And that would just be, it's a tragedy, especially with something like happening right now with COVID-19. So thank you, Mr. DeLuca. Okay, we are on discussion item number 7, which actually is a discussion about an update on the Maplewood affordable housing requirements. So, Mr. DeLuca, that is you.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted, I know we've been focusing on COVID-19. I just want you to know that we're still doing other stuff.
Yeah.
And the important thing here is I wanted to update you. We're still doing our rehab. We have an obligation to do 6 more since our settlement of our agreement. We have 1 that's being completed now, so that's 5 more after that. On our new construction, all of the new construction is doing 15% affordable units. And then we have a home ownership program in which we are putting aside $500,000 out of our trust fund to purchase homes that would be rehabbed and sold to families that are eligible under the affordable housing guidelines. I did send you a memo that we began conversations with a nonprofit developer from an adjoining town. And we can't make it public yet because they're still having conversations on their end. But I just wanted to let you know that we are moving ahead with that. We are not in the position really to get these 2 homes, renovate them, and get them back on the market. But working with a nonprofit partner that has experience, we'll be able to do that. So I believe that hopefully by our second meeting in June, we would have some kind of an agreement to bring to the township committee so that we could officially form this partnership. And I just wanted to put this on our plate to make sure everyone's okay with still moving forward and working out an agreement with the nonprofit partner to do this.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. Any comments from my colleagues?
My comment is just to confirm that I am.
Any other comments? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. DeLuca.
Thank you.
And we did receive the report. So those who have additional questions, reach out to Mr. DeLuca after this meeting. That will conclude our discussion items for tonight. We are now moving to the consent agenda. I'm looking for a motion for 1 through 4 and 6 through 10 on the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move items 1 through 4 and items 6 through 10 of the consent agenda.
Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Ms. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Dappis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGehee?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. As I mentioned earlier in the meeting, the introduction, resolution number 1620, number 5 on the consent agenda, There needs to be a change in the description. It currently says Maple Crest Tennis Court Rehab, but it should say Maple Crest Park. Can I get a motion to change the park improvements rather? Can I get a motion to move resolution number 116-20 with the revision of the description under engineering from Maple Crest Tennis Court Rehab to Maple Crest Park improvements?
Mayor, I wanted to add that there is another necessary amendment here as per my conversations with the OSTF fund, since this resolution was drafted. The first allocation for $18,500 for a seasonal park attendant. As you recall, sir, during our budget discussions earlier this year, we came to an agreement that that item will no longer come out of OSTF, but rather out of rec. So I would move your motion, sir, if you were to include this not being included, this allocation not being included.
I am open to that, and I think so. Therefore, what we'll have to do is there'll be three parts to this motion. I'm looking for a motion to move resolution number 116-20 with the striking out of the first item, which is recreation season park attendant, the amount being $18,500. Number two, I'm looking for a revision in the description under engineering department from Maple Crest Tennis Court Rehab to Maple Crest Park improvements. And then finally, I'm looking for a revision to the last line, Department OT Open Space Trust Fund, that the total now goes from $471,900 to now a total of 400, let's see, 6, 7, doing the math on the fly here, $53,400.
So moved.
May I get a second, please?
Second.
Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Dappis,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We're now on agenda item number 15, which is public comment on any subject matter. Mr. Wallace, do we have any comments from the public?
Yes, Mayor, I have one comment. It is from Aaliyah Cobell of Tappan, Tacoma. It's directed towards Mr. DeLuca during your discussion item number 5. It pertains to the question where Mr. DeLuca said someone can bring wine over to Rickleton Square or Yale Corner. The question is, would open alcohol be allowed?
That's only, yes, the answer is yes at a patio dining operation. So the patio dining, which it has to be sponsored by one of the 2 special improvement districts, they would have to sponsor it, and bring your own beer and wine is permitted during that activity.
Thank you. That is all the public comment I have for you.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace, and thank you for manning the command center there as well. We appreciate that. Seeing no other public comments, we will now close that portion of our agenda, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Perfect. Awesome. Good night. Thank you,
Next
everyone.
comment, everybody.
Bye.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.